Welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast, your go-to source for stories that nourish your mind, heart, and soul. Join us as we pull up a seat at the table with innovators, leaders, and visionaries, delving deep into their personal journeys. We celebrate the courage it takes to make an impact and drive change in our communities and beyond. Get ready to be inspired.
What up, y'all? It is episode 3 of the Bigger Than Food podcast. I am your host, Apollo Woods, OKC Black Eats, and a bunch of other things. It is episode 3. Today we have some cool things to talk about, and the main thing that we're going to talk about today is growing your mind. But before we get started, I got some exciting news to share. I did something daring. About a month ago, I saw this ad on Instagram, and it was about a competition, being able to cook with Chef Carla Hall. I don't know if y'all have ever watched Chef Carla Hall on Food Network and food channels across the country, but she's someone that I met a few years ago. The first year we did OKC Black Restaurant Weeks, and I met her. Got a chance to take a photo with her. And I've always admired her. Like when you see Black chefs on TV doing their thing, I took a video with her. She gave me a shout out. So I put my name in half of this competition. Now, I was not imagining at all that I would even win this. I'll have the opportunity to compete for $25,000 and a chance to cook alongside Chef Carla Hall in New York. I was checking my email. I was going to the mall because I needed to buy a clasp for my watch. I checked the email, and I thought it was spam. I almost deleted it, and I read it. Y'all, I'm getting a chance to compete with, I don't know how many people across the country to have a chance to win $25,000, some executive chefs, trained chefs, some home cooks, people who like to cook like myself. But the fact that I did it, and I almost didn't do it. I did it with no expectations. And when I got the email, I was like, man, you know what? I challenged myself. Now, here's the thing. I will have to get out of my mind on how well I think I'm going to do. And just do what I do. I mean, I'm just going to do what I do. I'm just going to do what I do. But anywho, I'm excited, y'all. I feel good about just getting a chance to compete doing something that I did not believe that I was qualified for. I did it anyway. Here I am challenging people all the time to stretch themselves, and I almost talked myself out of an opportunity. I don't know who that bar was for, but it was for somebody, but also it was probably for me as well. And I challenged myself, and this has been a year of challenging myself. So today's topic, talked about growing your business. Now, this could be growing your business. It could be any aspect of growth, but I'm going to talk to you about 3 ways to grow. I think I put on the caption something like three business tips or whatnot, but I think these ideas can apply to any aspect of your life, from my own experiences and reading and being mentored and being stretched myself. Now, these things that I'm learning, y'all, this is not something that I've mastered, but I'm willing to try. And so far, they've worked, and I believe it, and we're going to keep on doing. So here's the first thing I'm going to tell you to do. I don't have a PowerPoint slide. I decided today that I'm not.
You're listening to the Bigger Than Food podcast, where we explore the journeys of those who dare to make a difference. Today's episode is brought to you by Boss Up Business, dedicated to supporting individuals and organizations committed to positive change. Stay tuned as we continue our conversation with our guest, uncovering insights and experiences that inspire all of us to reach higher and dream bigger.
All right, y'all, I'm back. It was quick. Got to pay some bills. So this is what I'm learning in this podcast game. I'm in this training now, and they just say keep it simple. So I'm trying not to compare myself to other people and what they're doing. I'm going to keep it simple as we go on this podcast. But let's talk about these 3 things. The first thing that you need to understand if you're going to grow is that you have to renew your mind. Now, some of y'all who go to church, or probably have that scripture in your mind when, you know, the book that we read that talks about renewing your mind, transforming your thoughts. That's important. If you don't believe that you can do it, it's not going to get done. And I'm going to start off with it this way. You got to believe it. You have to believe that you have the ability to do it. You have to. You have to believe that you can do it. Now, you probably have something in your head that's consuming real estate in your brain that's saying to you, remember the last time you tried this, it didn't work. You probably have an experience that's consuming real estate in your head that's telling you this is not going to work. You have to give that thought, that experience, that person, you got to give them their eviction papers. It's time for them to go. It is. It is time for them to go. You get them out. And I want you to take a second. If you're driving and listening, or you're in your car taking your break, because it is lunchtime here in Oklahoma City, well, in Central Standard Time. If you're in a safe place to sit for a second, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think about that experience, that person, that voice. It could be a parent. It could be a significant other. It could be anything that says, remember the last time you tried to do something different, didn't work. I want you to think about that person or situation, visualize it, and I want you to visualize handing that person their eviction papers. It's time for them to go. It really is time for them to go because they are keeping you or convincing you and creating doubt that you can't do it, because you have to renew your mind. Because playing it safe is what average people do. People say that they're like, most of the world are 80% of followers, and then the rest are leaders. But I would venture to say that 90% of people are followers. 10% of people are leaders that are taking the risk. That's a large 90% of people in this world of followers. So you might be following a follower, not a leader. So if you're going to do something that's not typical of what you've been doing, you have to renew your mind. It's that self-talk that's in your head that says, I need to check those voices. Now, I'm not talking about, I'm really not talking about, let me clarify this, because I don't want to say this in a way that could potentially sound offensive. But I want to make sure that when you think about those thoughts you have in your head, that self-talk, it may not be your voice talking to you about what you should be doing. What's in your head could be thoughts about an experience that you had. I'll give you one personal experience. I was in high school and I was doing these oratorical contests, and I remember I did pretty well in some of those competitions, and I did pretty well. Got the certificate and whatnot, and then I had an opportunity to go to win a like $500 academic scholarship as I was preparing to go from high school to college. And someone said to me that I would not win before we started, but I had confidence. I did. I had confidence that I was going to get up there and I was going to knock their socks off. So I went up there. I was in this church. I was ignoring the fact that there were very few people in the audience looked like me. And I got up there and people were clapping. I knew, I just knew that anybody come behind me, you better do something great, because I was going to win. If not first place, second place. Got down to the announcement. I didn't even place. And I immediately went back to that person that told me that I was not going to win. And then to find out the reason why I didn't win is because I was Black. As a teenager, that was hurtful, tremendously hurtful. And from that point on, I became more afraid and cautious of speaking in front of people. because that experience was consuming real estate in my head and was dictating how I showed up for things that I felt like I deserved because I worked for it. So if you're going to grow your business, if you're going to achieve that fitness goal, if you're going to try something you've never tried before, you first have to believe that you can do it. Hands down. You first have to believe that you can do it without a doubt. So, as I said, you must renew your mind. But what's the second part, Apollo? The second part, if you want to grow your business and you want to have better relationships or better health, I'm not a relationship coach at all. We're just talking about growing, period. You have to study and execute. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one because I live in Oklahoma City. It's a small market city. And all of my life, I've always heard people say that Oklahoma is so far behind. And there are areas that we are behind in. But if you travel around the United States in different places, even some of the big, more populated cities, they're behind in some areas too. Everyone's not moving at the same pace. So the second part is, if you want to grow, you're going to study and execute. Now, somewhere I read, going back to this book that I read often, and it is a blueprint for my life, and it's just study and show yourself to be approved. We are in the age of information. We are in the age of information where we have so much information available to us, and you do not have to attend a college or university, a trade or tech school to learn new things. There's information that's so readily available to us that you can learn things without having to pay for them. Now, that doesn't excuse people that want to pick your brain for free when they could pay you because they believe, oh, you're a small business and I know you, we're friends, you're the homie. I see you online. They think you're friends. They say, let me sit down and talk to you. And you're exchanging all this information and they go off and implement your idea and they make money off of you. I'm not talking about that type of scenario. But what I am talking about is that if you understand that you have a business and you don't have enough customers, you need to learn skills to attract people to your business. In this age of social media, there's so much information available to us that all you have to do, because if you know you need to post something every day, doesn't have to be perfect. TikTok shows us that. If you look at the content on TikTok, TikTok is not perfect and polished content. TikTok has made tremendous growth and has become a popular platform for millennials and Gen Zers, or whoever the next generation is, because people are simply picking up their cell phone and posting things and reposting, and it's not perfect content, but they're putting it out there every day. So if you know that you have a business and you have no customers, or you know you have a business and you don't have enough customers or traffic to be able to pay the bills, you need to go learn a skill. It's important. You have to learn a skill. But let me bring it back home to where I reside in Oklahoma City. Y'all, I guarantee you, every day I come across somebody who's talking about what we don't do here. I'm coming across somebody often, I'm talking about at least 5 times a week, at least, that believes that this is something that can't happen here because this is what people don't do. Let me bring it in a little bit closer so that way, as I'm sharing this information with you, you don't think that I'm pulling from pie out of the sky. When I started OKC Black Eats full-time, 2016 when I moved back to Oklahoma, I've never lived in Oklahoma City. My first time living here was when I moved here, when I relocated with my former employer before I left for full-time entrepreneurship. The brunch scene wasn't here. Yes, there are restaurants, but things weren't happening because people believed, oh, we have breakfast, or we just don't do that here. I'm a risk taker. Because what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone that assumes all the risk. They take high risk, they do high risk activities for a high reward. But what's a small business owner? A small business owner is a person that manages people and resources. Not to say they may not be an entrepreneur like, but an entrepreneur will get it from the ground up. So back to my example, so that way you understand when I'm talking about studying and executing. But what I realized that what was missing from the marketplace was consistency. When you think about the definition of trust, trust is someone that does a behavior repeatedly, consistently. So you trust that they either will or won't do something. So you could either, like I think Mike Tyson said this, that trust that people are going to be who they are. Trust if someone wants to partner with you, trust that based on your behavioral patterns, I can only trust that you will do this, or you've shown that you won't do this. So where does studying and executing come into play when we're talking about growing your business or moving down the line of the goals that you say you want to achieve? Because studying will open the door to information that you need to do a thing. Was I anticipating being a part of the real estate world? No. When you're studying, you're getting information to be able to connect the dots. So through studying, what we realized that the challenges for Black-owned businesses in Oklahoma City, many of those challenges are just like challenges that are affecting non-minority-owned businesses in our city. How could that be? Well, this is how it can be. If there are a small percentage of small business that only make six figures and sales revenue, if we live in a state where 1 in 11 Oklahomans are in poverty, if 100% of the students in our public school district receive free breakfast and lunch, if we are a small minority of the city and state population, then that means there are other groups that are impacted in the same way. Now, here's where there's the difference. Of course, we can talk about the impact of Jim Crow and segregated laws and redlining over the last 70 years in the state that were specifically targeting the growth or laying down obstacles for Black families and Black people, period. Yes, acknowledging that, not running away from that. I'm not watering down the message at all. Yes, those are the exceptions to the travesties that Black people have experienced. But I'm talking about growth. If you look at the assessment in your environment, you'll realize what factors are existing. And as you begin to study, you can articulate a message. Let me bring it in a lot more closer so it makes more sense to you. So we're in this space and talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a term that's been around. DEI has been around. It's not new, but it's being implemented and most talked about after national news involving Black people. Yeah, I know. There's usually a response to some change after it impacts Black people. Yes. Yes. But the more companies and or individuals I speak to in that space are having a hard time implementing DEI strategies. Why? They don't have enough information. Why? The majority of people in those positions are white female. Yes, women are a part of a minority group. But if this issue was birthed out of travesties and murders and injustices involving Black people, why aren't more Black people leading the charge in the DEI space? I'm not here to give you an exact reason and why something happens the way it happens. I just want you to think about what you need to study to know and then execute. You see, previously I mentioned that I come across a lot of conversations in my environment that believe these are things that we don't do. And I mentioned to you that in a way to build trust, you have to be consistent. So if you're going to be inconsistent, how can you build trust? The first thing I told you, if you want to grow, you got to renew your mind. The second thing I said, you must study and execute. The execute, the task, and the ability is important because there is not a person in this world that will remove someone that makes you money. Any corporation, you are valuable when you bring money to the table. And we also see it in ways like this. This statement might rub some people the wrong way. As I'm going through this real estate journey, good friend and mentor, several people have told me this. You got to have one of three if you don't have all. You got to have the money. You have to have the ability. You have to have a plan. You have the money, the ability, and the plan. Things come to you. Hey, I don't have $50 million. I know people who have access to $50 million. But the people who seem to have money don't have the other parts. They may not have the vision or the ability, but they have money. Now, Black people here in Oklahoma, Black people in Oklahoma City, I want you to come a little bit close to the screen. And I'm going to talk directly to you. Just because somebody has money does not mean they have the ability to do it for us. They just have money. Come closer again. We have always had the means, the ability to do. We do not have to give up our power, our influence, our ability because someone outside of the community has money. You can do it too. But to do that, you must study and you have to execute. So again, the first two things we said, if you want to talk about growth in any area of your life, you have to start in your brain, in your mind. You have to believe that you can do it. If there's somebody or something or a situation that is repeating negative self-talk or putting doubt in your brain, give them their eviction papers. Don't give them 30 days. Don't give them 5 days. Don't give them 3 days. They need to be evicted and removed from the premises ASAP for you to make room for more positive thoughts in your brain. The second part that I mentioned to you was you have to study and execute. Study to show that you know what you're doing. Study to show that you know what you're doing. There's plenty of resources. I found out recently in a masterclass for entrepreneurs that I'm taking now, there's a Moore Norman library. Libraries in our areas have a lot of resources for businesses, for your business plan and presentations. But I didn't know that until I joined Community. So here's the third one. I said you must renew your mind, number one. I said you have to study and execute, number two. The third one, invest in community. I'm not talking about put your dollars into buying a piece of land. I'm not talking about going spending money with Black-owned businesses, which I do all the time, and I'm encouraged to do that all the time. I'm not straying away from that. But in this example, when I'm saying invest in community, I'm talking about people. Relationships matter. Who you know matters. You ever looked at I read this book called Relationship Factor a few years ago. And he said in that book, he said, how do you, let me summarize this in a better way. He says, when I look at what I want to do with my life and my goals and my ambitions, you have to move people around. And let's say it's a puzzle. I love my family. But my expectations of my family for a real estate project might be I need to move them out of that place of expectation and support and ability to another space to make room for someone that can help me get there. It doesn't mean I love them any less. It means that I got to move some people around. It doesn't mean that because I decide to adjust my circle of influence that I love anyone more or less. It just means I was put on this earth for a particular purpose and I need to adjust. So what I'm telling you, invest in community. I'm saying you need to look at your circle of influence and ask yourself the tough, self-reflective question. Are the people in my circle of influence who are influencing the decisions that I make, are they growing in a direction that is aligned with my ambitions? If you want to be debt-free, are the people in your associations, your circle of influence, are they just spenders? They waste money. They never got no money. They don't know how to save money. They don't file their taxes. They don't talk about investing. Then you need to adjust who you associate with. As the old saying says, birds of a feather flock together. So if you're going to grow, you need to invest in a community. In Oklahoma City, we talk about Dallas and the neighboring states a lot, mainly Dallas. It's the closest, largest city outside of Oklahoma City. There's a lot of relationship there. We have family. If you live in Oklahoma, you definitely have family in Texas. And people talk about the network. And the reason why some larger cities are great places to be for Black people is because there's a higher population of Black folks. There are folks that are traveling there because they want to live there, move from other states. And there's a sense of community. Somewhere I read in this book in the beginning, Genesis, where they're in this garden. You look at garden or you take community. They're in space of association where the garden was plentiful. Resources were plentiful. There was something for everybody. You had different types of thoughts, minds, people, experiences in community. Let me pull this a little bit closer again, because I don't want to give you these hypothetical conversations and topics and discussions. And you're like, oh, this just sound like a bunch of like gossip talk and TMZ, etc. No, I want to connect some things I've learned to some personal experiences. In Oklahoma City, we had an area called Deep Deuce, and Deep Deuce was the equivalent of Tulsa, North Tulsa's Black Wall Street. It's a vibrant community. Black-owned businesses, pharmacies, museum. When artists would travel through Oklahoma, they would stop in Oklahoma City, which could be considered the heart of music for the state and for the region, for a Black artist and musicians, a safe place to stop, housing, hotels, restaurants for us. Well, when Highway 235 was constructed, it separated downtown. It was the boundary for separating Black folks from downtown. Now that area is completely gentrified. No existing Black-owned businesses, although there is still real estate owned by Black people, and I believe there's just one building, and there's a street named after a prominent Black man in the city, but there's no Black culture. So the identity of Oklahoma City, in my opinion, for Black Oklahoma City, was connected to Deep Deuce. Now that it has been eradicated, how do you find your identity when your identity was attached to community? And we see the impacts today. Black folks are spread all over the place in Oklahoma City because of how community was broken up. So if you want to grow, you need to find people and connect with people who think differently than you. Now, you want to connect with people who share integrity, who have a giving spirit. They're not just takers, they're givers. And when you're giving into something, you grow something that everyone can benefit from. You want to find those morals and principles that are important to you and connect with those folks. But we should be open to people that have different thoughts and experiences that can help us grow. That's why investing in community is important. Investing in community is a game changer for learning and growing. If I ever set a table or hosted something with all my friends who have helped me with my Black-owned businesses, they're all not Black. I've learned something from everybody, because who you grow with doesn't always have to be someone that looks and thinks exactly like you. And what I've learned in my shortcomings and my mistakes is that it is okay to find people. I had to learn to be okay with people who thought differently than I did, because I learned something from them. Everybody has different experiences. So we, specifically talking to people who live in Oklahoma City, we must find ways to build community with each other. Some people, when you establish your morals and your principles and your values, don't add up. They don't. I know. Don't worry. I'm not going to say the names or businesses. We just don't add up. So you find people who you gravitate to build community. So, as I said, if you're trying to grow, y'all, there are 3 things that you must do. Renew your mind. You got to believe in yourself. Number 2, you must study and execute. Gain more information and then execute it, and do it consistently. Somewhere I read, I don't read a bunch of books. There are very few books I've read from front to back. But I'm the type of reader that I'll read a little bit and move on. If better is the option available, good isn't good enough. If excellent is the option available, your best isn't good enough. Now, to go from good to better to excellent, you have to grow and move down the spectrum. There's always an opportunity to learn. There's always an opportunity to grow. I was thinking about something as I was getting my ring light set up. And I tell y'all, Google does a great job of reminding you what you once were. Google does a great job of reminding me what I looked like in 2014, 2015. Does a fantastic job of showing me how small I was back then. Yeah, I was fit. I think I was getting down to a medium. I was getting ready. I was be able to shop at Navy and the Gap comfortably. I'm not like that no more. Because Google doesn't also tell you what you were going through at that time. Yes, I was smaller, but my life was in shambles. I was trying to heal from a divorce. I was wilding out. I was discovering who I was in my walk with God. Started a new career. In the process of, and in that career, experiencing the downturn in the oil and gas industry. In the process, was offered to move away from a city that I thought I would live in the rest of my life. Google doesn't remind you of the circumstances that you were dealing with and what others would see as you were having a great time. And yes, God has been good to me. I outperformed in my career. I connected with some great people, redefined my friendships. I became a better friend and overall human being, but it was hell. But Google just reminds me of, you went on this trip, you were at this party. That's what Google Photos and videos reminds me of every day. But the conditions were not optimal. So I look at myself today and the lack of commitment I've had to parts of my health, and looking at my weight gain and how snug this 2X feels on me right now. It looks good on the video, but your boy walked out. You walk down the sidewalk, look at yourself in the glass, you're like, what? You're poking out there. Because my older relatives do a great job of reminding me. My uncle, real quick. My uncle does a great job of trying to guess how much I weigh. And sometimes he gets it right. Whatever number he says, I drop 20. But that's just what Google will do. Remind you of the external. But it won't remind you of what you were going through at that moment. So what does that have to do with studying and executing? Because if you're studying, then what you have to do will change. You have to be amenable and flexible to new approaches to grow, to get to that end goal that you're shooting for. The last thing, as I said, renew your mind, study and execute. And the last thing is you must invest in community. Relationships matter. People are what makes this world go round, and you don't always have time. You don't have a lot of time to do things. But being intentional, you will allocate the right time. When you're investing in people and others and in your relationships, you will make up your mind, renew it, and make up your mind and say, this is the type of environment that I do not thrive in. So that just means, as I mentioned before, there are some people in the puzzles that you might have to move around for the most optimal picture you need to see for the direction that you're going. So you probably ask yourself, this is a good motivational talk, Apollo, but I thought you were going to be on this podcast talking about food. I am. This food is spiritual food. This food is mental food. On the Bigger the Food podcast, it's more than just about food. You follow the content and things that we post, and you often hear me say that our mission's bigger than food. Because at the end of the day, it's always been about people. And my priority and my mission involves Black people. It doesn't exclude any other group, but my people are the ones who I care about the most and what affects my people. But I live in community. And me living in community does not mean that I'm excluding anybody else. I just want to do the thing that God called me to do and be the loudest person advocating for the beauty and success and livelihood of Black-owned restaurants, businesses, households, families, entrepreneurs. That's what I want when my time is up. Because we don't have time. We don't have time because if you are born and raised in the state of Oklahoma as a Black male, you will die 6 to 8 years before the person that you are partnered with. There are many Black men who won't see 70, who were born and raised and never left this state. So we have to do something. We have to invest in each other. So the Bigger the Food podcast, we're going to talk about more topics than just food and Southern food and soul food and your favorite dish. It's more than just what's on the plate. We're going to talk about what's between our ears, the things that we see, the words that we speak, the relationships and connections that we can make. So I hope you've enjoyed this 40-minute conversation, me solo dolo today. But it's important that I wanted you to hear from me. There are 3 things that you can do. All of them require you taking steps and deciding that you're going to renew your mind, you're going to study and execute, and you will invest in community. Well, y'all, that's my time today. I don't want to take up too much of your lunchtime as you go back to work. So I hope that you would watch this replay and take some notes for yourself. And do me a favor, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you get the alerts and notifications of next week's episode, because I've committed to doing this weekly no matter what. So every Thursday, 12 noon Central Standard Time, you will hear from myself and a guest on fun topics, on whether it's food, business trends, and what amazing leaders are doing, not just here in Oklahoma City, but across the country. We have a great lineup, a lot of good people that we're going to bring on. As I close, like I always say, be intentional with your spending and support a Black-owned restaurant and small business today. And like we always say, our mission is bigger than food.
Thank you for joining the Bigger Than Food podcast. We hope you found inspiration in stories shared today. Remember, it's the courage to take action that drives real change in the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Bigger Than Food podcast for more conversations with movers and shakers who are shaping our tomorrow. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep making a difference.